Thank you very much and welcome to this session. We're going to talk, this panel is going to deal with the political landscape as it is. We've invited to respond to the panelists, representative of the Republican Party who has not arrived, and someone representing President Obama's re-election who has arrived. And then we're going to talk about violence, school violence, and I'm glad that a lot of our young people are here. And then we also, at the end of all of the presentations, we will go to the floor and have you question the panelists that we will call the action panelists, who are from the various people that you will hear from their offices to follow up. We're going to also every day have working groups that will go into breakout sessions that will say that I want to, based on what I heard, be part of formulating the action strategy in that area. We are not here to just hear speeches, panels, and go and say, I got to see so-and-so. We want you to then, at the end of the day, go into work sessions, you that can, because by the time we get to Harlem Saturday for Measure the Movement, we're going to say in these areas, we're going to do these things, and you go back to your cities and work on them. We are also going to be announcing at the end of the week that we're going to visit every city on a national tour right after this. So this is a working conference. That is why we call it National Action Network, not National Pontificating Network, not National Procrastination Network. Now, all of you that have a lot of passionate feelings, we understand that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But we want to hear the information from the speakers, the panelists. Then when we go to the Q&A after the first two sessions, go to the mic. If you are so passionate that you can't hold it, raise your hand now and I'll have them escort you. Because nobody spends their money to come to town to watch you have a fit. I just want to get that clear up front. There's nobody gonna have no fit up in here. And the noise here, we are the fit experts. I know I have, and I can see when a fit's coming. If I see it in your face, I'm gonna yank you up and do that. This is not about getting your best fit off. This is about us coming with an action strategy. We have real problems and real pain. And we really need to deal with that in our communities. We don't have time for showboating. The other thing that I neglected to send a memo to some of the younger members of the panel, like Charles Blow and Harold and them, is, as you see, Reverend Jefferson and George Gresham and Lee, and of course my esteemed brother George Gresham brought the cheering squad with him. I should have told y'all that. That's how they do politics at man. So you can tell who brought the cheering squad when you announce them. Y'all did that on cue. I got that. But that don't mean every time they speak y'all got to do the same thing. We have a time thing, so y'all gave me one ovation. Don't stand up every time they get up. We got it. They popular, y'all voted for them, we got it, all right? Now let's go into dialogue. Also, everybody please turn your cell phones off, because we don't want to interrupt. Turn your cell phone off, other than the Lord. And he's not going to call you, he'll call me and I'll announce it overnight. I'm going to pose the first question. The 2012 election is now in gear, with the president announcing earlier this week he's running for re-election. I would like each of you to take 3 minutes to say what you think are the issues that must be addressed and that are most important to voters in general and voters of color, African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans in the 2012 election? What are the most important issues? I'm going to start on my far left, Harold Ford, then far right, Charles Blow. I should have it the other way around. Harold, you usually on the right, he's on the left. But anyway, I don't know who did the seating up here. We're going to Harold. That's how you argue on Morning Joe. Go to Harold, then Charles Blow, then Reverend Jefferson, Roberto Ramirez. Harold Ford Jr.
First of all, I'll be much less than 3 minutes. Reverend, it's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to join you, Michael Hardy, and Dr. Richardson, and all of the board members, and all of the chapter leaders, and those who were part and make the National Action Network activated in communities across the country. So I thank you again, Reverend, for your leadership and vision, and thank you for bringing us all together. Again, not many people should not be lost. Not many people anywhere in the country can call on the president to change his schedule in the middle of budget negotiations, in the middle of external events happening in the Middle East. We're fortunate to have our distinguished leader here in New York and nationally able to do that. I'd say three things very quickly. I'd say one, jobs. The most fundamental issue, I think, on the minds of all voters. I think it transcends race, transcends communities and income categories, is the notion of the middle class and whether or not the kinds of jobs we'll be creating in the near term and in the intermediate term will be those kind of jobs that can support families. We've seen the unemployment numbers come down. We've seen the markets, or Wall Street, or for that matter, large companies engage in transactions, either buying other companies, the kind of activity that needs to take place on Wall Street to suggest that things are moving in the right direction are happening. The challenge is that it's not translating into the kind of jobs and the kinds of paying jobs that many Americans, and for that matter, as you touched on, Reverend, African Americans in large communities and rural communities across the country are looking for. It's my hope that we even focus in a stronger way. Teachers, nurses, engineers, the job categories where the greatest need is over the next 10 years. Those who are elected officials, those who are community activists back in your communities and certainly back in your neighborhoods across the country. We have to begin to stress in many ways where the jobs are and try our hardest, not only with our children and young people and college graduates, but those at every age group to understand where the opportunities may be. Two, we can't ignore where the energy in the Republican Party is. It's around the debt, at least nationally. They've unveiled what I believe is a damaging plan from one of their rising stars in the Congress, from Wisconsin, Paul Ryan, who I think at his core has good intention. He's not a bad person. He's outlined a series of cuts to entitlement programs. He's outlined a series of tax cuts to large companies in the country. His plan, albeit one that at least lays out a way to reduce the debt, fails the fairness test. It says to the wealthiest in the country, you need not pay more, but we will target those who are most vulnerable to shoulder the majority of the burden. And three, I think the set of issues that will determine this race are external events. Charles Blow at his newspaper and others have written a lot about them, be it in the Middle East or other places, be it in Japan, things the president can't predict, can't control. These events will certainly play a role in helping to determine whether or not this president finds himself in a stronger re-election stance. And finally, to Lee Saunders, who will speak on this, I think the efforts of Republicans to give Democrats issues, be it they're trying to strip basic rights of American workers to negotiate better conditions, be it the overreach of even Republicans at the federal level, and the fact that the Republicans at this point have no viable candidate, probably puts the president in a stronger position. For those of you from Ohio, Virginia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina, we will have a harder time winning those states this time than we did last time. So the idea of voter turnout, the idea of being organized and being prepared is probably more important this time than it was in 2008. Remember, we had a boogeyman, the name of George Bush, who people rallied around almost 4 years ago. We don't have that luxury. As a matter of fact, Republicans are going to rally around our candidate and our president as they try to energize their own base. So thank you again, Reverend, for having me.